Navajo County Connection. I'm David Tenney, member of the Navajo County Board of Supervisors representing District 4. And as usual, my co-host.
Hey, I'm Dawnafe Whitesinger representing District 5. It's good to be here.
Glad to have you back, Dawnafe.
Good to see you.
Always fun to come see Mel and the crew here and let our constituents know what's going on in Navajo County.
Yes.
Folks, we got a good show for you today, something we hope you'll find to be informative and talk to you about. Something that's kind of some exciting news that's been going around. We've got a couple of guests that have been on here before. One that's been probably 4 years or so since he was on, and one that was on just a few months ago. We'll start with you, Jim. Let me introduce Jim Zornes, who is the Forest Supervisor for the Apache Sitgreaves Forest, stationed out of the Springerville-Eager area. Jim, welcome to the show again.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Glad to have you with us. And like I said, we just had you here a few months ago, so probably no need to make the same introductions we did then, but we'll be talking to you more in here in just a minute. And we want to welcome back also Pascal Berlioux, who when he was here before was representing a different entity, someone who was working on the 4Fry project as a contractor who was bidding on the project at that time, but now works on it because he now is the executive director of the Eastern Arizona Counties organization. Pascal, welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Glad to have you with us. Will you take just a minute, introduce yourself, kind of give a little brief history to the folks who are viewing from home, let them know who you are, where you're from, and kind of what brought you to this point in your career?
Yes, certainly. As you can probably guess from the accent, I come a little bit from the west side, the other side of the west side, all the way to France, actually. Been in the U.S. about 30 years now, proud to be an American citizen. Spent about 20 years in high-tech electronics industry in the East Coast. Came to the West about 10 years ago. And very happy, very proud to be indeed working for the 5 counties of the Eastern Arizona Counties organization.
All right, and you and your wife and kids live in?
We live in Flagstaff.
All right. Well, welcome to the show. We're glad to have you with us.
Yes, welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Dawnafe, what I want to do is bring these gentlemen in to talk about something we've been working on in Navajo County and the Eastern Arizona Counties organization in conjunction with the Forest Service. And if I can, I'll give a little background and kind of introduce the topic today. What we want to talk about is stewardship contracting in general, and then specifically one certain stewardship contract that we've all been working on in the recent weeks. Give a little bit of a background, just kind of remind everybody. The last 10 years we've had here in the White Mountains what is called the White Mountain Stewardship Contract. It was the first stewardship contract of its kind in the country. The biggest undertaking of its kind, obviously, that the Forest Service had ever done. It was a successful contract in many ways and a good learning tool in many ways for us to all learn on how to better use a stewardship contract for treating our forests and trying to reintroduce forest industry back into the area. So a lot of acreage got treated over that time frame. A lot of acreage around the communities of Show Low and Pine Top, and Springerville and Eager, Alpine and Nutrioso. And a lot of the treatments and forest thinning that was done in those areas, of course, saved many of those towns during the Wallow Fire just a few years ago. Fast forward to just a few months ago, and what we got was that we found that we were coming to the end of the White Mountain Stewardship contract. It was a 10-year contract. It was winding down. And we had the industry here that was dependent upon and had been using that acreage and using the trees off of that acreage. We kind of noticed that there was a shortage. So one thing I want to talk about is some of the funding shortages that you've had in your office. Obviously, the federal budget is not flush in money. Everybody knows the kind of struggles that we've had with the federal budget. The Forest Service certainly falls in line there, and there's been struggles. And so many of us have tried to encourage everyone that has anything to do with that to increase the amount of money that was being funneled to the Apache Sitgreaves Forest so that we could get more acreage ready for treatment. And I personally, Jim, if I could, would like to take just a minute to thank some of the people that did that, because thanks to the hard work of people like Senator Flake and Senator McCain and Representatives Gosar and Kirkpatrick and others that have gone to bat for us to help us in our congressional district, and then thankfully a listening ear from the Chief of the Forest Service, Chief Tidwell, the Regional Forester, Cal Joyner, and people like Robert Bonney at the Secretary office in D.C., others that have gone to bat and have said, yes, we need to funnel more money into the Apache Sitgreaves because we have these businesses that need acres to treat, but we don't have the money to get the acreage ready to do so. So I want to publicly thank them for seeing that need and in stepping up and getting, if I'm not mistaken, they have been able in recent months to increase the amount of money that's coming into your budget for this kind of treatment, correct?
That's true. From the regional perspective, we have taken more of an active role in the restoration forest, specifically for fry, and the regional forester has determined that we need to make sure that we put our money where the restoration issues are. And with that, it was kind of a rebundling of regional money, and we've been very successful for 2015 in the planning process to have a very robust budget.
Good, very good, and I'm appreciative of everyone who has helped us get to that point. So one of the things that I mentioned before I kind of got sidetracked there to thank them was that we had these businesses who need the acreage and need the logs coming off this acreage, yet we had 50 some odd thousand acres of what burned in the Wallow fire was acreage that you had already taken through the NEPA or the planning process, if you will. It had cleared all that and was ready to be thinned and treated, and then it burned in the fire. And so we had that lack of acreage that was NEPA ready, I guess is kind of what we call it in the circles we run in, really shelf stock or acreage that's NEPA ready. And so we had a need for acreage that had already been through that process for these companies to use. And that's kind of where we were on a tour in August, you and I and Hunter Moore, who works with us in Navajo County, where you mentioned to me another pot of money that was available possibly to do a stewardship contract through Navajo County and the Eastern Counties Organization, money that had been kind of set aside at the regional office for doing some of these kind of treatments if we were interested in doing that. So as early as just a couple months ago in August, we had this kind of a 4-day time frame, a window we had to jump through to get this done, and you were all able to do that. Could you touch just briefly, Jim, on how that kind of came to be and that stewardship contract, this one that we're going to talk about specifically, how that came to be?
The money came from requests from Senator McCain and Senator Flake, based in large part on the work of Navajo County and some of the local industries about a concern over fiber shortage coming up in the near term. That was in early May, and it took us a while to figure out how do you take Chief's money through the region and put it to good use to something that actually would solve a problem. And it took a lot of starts and stops, but we ended up on the concept of what's called a stewardship agreement. It's within the stewardship contracting laws. It's not, there's actually three types. One is called the integrated resource service contract, and the short term, that's where you pay to get work done, where the Forest Service or the government would pay to get work done. There's an integrated resource timber contract, where the money would go the other way, that the purchaser would pay the federal government for the material on site and for that work. And stewardship allows a trading of goods for services. It came about in 2003. Never have heard of before. It was remarkably a giant step forward in the treatment of western forests especially, but it's used across the country. And then we have what's called the stewardship agreement, and it's kind of a hybrid of the two, and that's what we have entered into between Navajo County and ECO and the National Forest.
Okay, so we're out on a forest tour, touring the San Juan fire, actually, that occurred near in Vernon, the Vernon area in the summer, and we were out on a tour there, and you approached us about this, and kind of talk about how that process went and the time frame that we had to bring that Pascal into the picture here and get him involved.
Well, we were running out of options on how to put the money to use. We were running out of time because the fiscal year was ending, and it was tied to fiscal year 2014, which ended September the 30th. And it's an agreement, an instrument that I've used before in another region, and it worked very well. So we thought we would give it a shot. The San Juan tour and spending you, Hunter, and I in the back of the Escape trying to work out the details. And with that first mutual understanding, I took that to the regional office in Albuquerque. And it kind of set the stage in motion for this very short timeline to get a lot of work done in entering into this agreement.
Okay, and so then you probably don't know this. So then get the call from you saying, yeah, we think we can make this happen. So I get on the phone with Pascal, and I say, hey, Pascal, did you know you need to be at a meeting in Springerville tomorrow at 2 o'clock, I think, maybe in the afternoon? And Pascal said, no. I said, well, you need to be at a meeting in Springville, you're going to talk about this stewardship contract, kind of dumped it all on his plate right then. And then, so you show up to this meeting, 2:00 in the afternoon, 4 days before the deadline that this money had to be used, where it goes back to DC. And that's kind of where you come into the picture.
Exact. So get that phone call from you actually about 9 p.m. the day before with scheduling of a meeting.
You didn't have to tell people I called you that late. They thought
well,
maybe I called you at noon or something. You know?
Well, 9 p.m. is relatively early. You generally call around 11.
I usually call you about midnight.
Yeah. Well, essentially, long story short here, step up in a meeting room full of people from the FRS, from other people from the regional forests, and essentially an interesting challenge. We have an opportunity to capture funding made available from the Chief of the Forest Service. The timeline is short, and it's a challenge to the goodwill and to the ability of making it happen. So essentially, the FRS crew and ECO, Eastern Arizona Counties, we essentially wrapped up in 4 days process, which typically take, 3 to 4 months, something like that?
It would take a while. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we had to convene an emergency meeting of the board of directors for the Eastern Arizona Counties, had to make an emergency meeting for the board of supervisors in Navajo County, actually, and we got it done.
And we did, and congratulations. And you know, we've been in a few meetings where we've talked about this, and people can't hardly believe that we pulled a federal contract together on 4 days' notice to get that done. And so my hats off to both you folks, Pascal, you for jumping through the hoops you did, and then Jim for your people being on the side of things to say, hey, we need to make this work. And so thank you not only your folks, but the regional office and all of them that did. So now we have this idea of the stewardship contract. This money is made available for the ECO and Navajo County to now partner with the Forest Service to say, here's some acreage that needs treated, and we're going to treat it, clean up the forest. Let's talk briefly, if we can first. This was part of what was one of the task orders that was done in the White Mountain Stewardship Agreement, correct? And when their contract ended, they had to pull out of the forest, and this was acreage they hadn't done yet. So this had already been through the planning process, the NEPA. It was all done, correct?
It was done. It was part of what was we call Wallow West salvage that we completed back in 2012. And part of the task order was with White Mountain Stewardship, but at the time, White Mountain Stewardship was terminating. They had to get all of the work done in the green, what we call the green, where it hadn't burned. And they basically had to take their resources and work all of the green task orders that we had issued instead of leaving green treated areas. If they had continued in the salvage, they wouldn't have got all the green areas done. So they had to pull out and left a piece of one task order, and then we have Wallow West was somewhere a little less than 12,000 acres of treatment that had been identified. Wallow Fire was 538,000 acres, so it was just a minor piece to begin with. But every acre is important. We have learned that over the years that you can't forego treatment on any of these acres, whether they're green or black. If the timber has burned and you don't remove some of that biomass, it's just fueling the fire next time. And so with it, that's why we entered into the agreement. It's for mutual benefit, not only to local businesses, but to ECO and to the counties and to the National Forest System.
Very good. So we entered that contract. And how much acreage are we talking about here, Pascal, that there's this contract?
So the Berlioux contract, it is called, is going to be affecting 856 acres.
856 acres. But the way the stewardship agreement is written is that if we can end up getting more acreage done for the same amount of money, it could be expanded beyond the 856 acres, correct?
That's exactly right.
And then even beyond that, if maybe we use this agreement to then find other projects that we can partner with the Forest Service on to keep treating the forest, cleaning it up, and funneling product to our businesses to keep the restoration going. Did you have a comment you were going to make, Pascal?
Yeah, I think it's a very important point. We really have two objectives with the Eastern Arizona counties, and of course Navajo County being one of them. The first objective is that we have to make sure that we continue to do the restoration treatments that were done for the last 10 years by the White Mountain Stewardship Contract. We just cannot stop treating the acreage. We know what the alternative is. It is a type of catastrophic fire that essentially destroys the landscape for the next 20, 30, 40 years. The second objective, obviously, is that we have a forest industry that needs wood in order to keep employing people, in order to keep contributing to the economic development. So really, the stewardship agreement is a framework. And that framework has the ability to be extended up to 10 years. The number of acres that can be treated is not limited under the contract. So truly what is taking place right now is this stewardship agreement that was signed between the EBRS, Eastern Arizona counties, and Navajo County as a fiscal agent, is a contract that we have signed for 1 year. We are going to implement one specific project, 856 acres. But I think really what is important is that this is essentially a test run. We are going to test our ability to implement work on the ground for this 856 acre up to 1 year. And the clear strategy for the counties is that we want that to be a jumping board in order to extend stewardship agreement to 10 years. And in order to extend the work first to the 10 to 12,000 acres that have been identified in the Wallow West environmental assessment, and also into possibly a much broader project in the Black River Basin in order to work toward the watershed productivity. So there is a huge context to what we're doing here, and we are really looking at performing well on this test run because the possibility to extend are considerable.
Well said. Thank you.
I really am a newbie to the conversation, and I appreciate the work that you've invested in this and investing in our local forest and ensuring that we're keeping it healthy. And thank you, David Tenney, Supervisor Tenney, in the conversation. And it's certainly important for Navajo County to participate in the conversation. And one of in listening to time factor, in my understanding timber, is there a certain, I guess, shelf life for that timber? We're looking 3 years out from the Wallow fire, and how do we utilize, what is the industry going to look like?
So you are absolutely true. Timber which has essentially died in the fire, not necessarily burned, but essentially been cooked off by the heat, has a fairly short lifespan. 2 to 3 years is the maximum from a sawmill perspective if you want to make beams out of that wood or lumber. Right. Typically 1 year is about all you want. So right now we have wood which is about 3 years old. The realistic utilization of that wood is a biomass application. It is important to state that stewardship agreement is a competitive process. Eastern Arizona County's organization, Navajo County, as a fiscal agent, we are putting a request for proposal, an RFP, out. It has actually been completed last week. Forest Service has been a great partner to work with. Jim's people have been absolutely awesome. Here again, we did in about 1 week's worth of time, what typically takes 6 to 8 weeks. We are going to publish this request for proposal this coming Friday, October the 31st. It's going to be in the White Mountain Independent. And essentially, we will see who bids on it. We expect that the industry is most interested by that type of wood will be Forest Energy, which is a pellet plant right here in Shorelau, and Novo Power, which is the thermal electricity generating station near snowflakes. That would be the most logical user for this wood.
So, and then the answer to her question is, for lumber, yeah, 1 year, but after that it can still be used for biomass, whether it be the pellets or to make electricity, and that's why we're able to go ahead and treat this wood under this contract, even though we're quite confident there's not going to be a lot of value as far as taking it and sawing it into lumber.
Absolutely, and I would say this is also what encourages us moving forward toward the rest of the 10,000 acres available in the Wallow West assessment, because we are lucky enough to have the Navajo power plant right here in Snowflake. And as long as you're talking about burning wood, the age of the wood itself becomes much less relevant. So I would say in the first year you can still do lumber. In the next year or two you can still do pellets. And after that the only thing you can really do with it is burn it for generating electricity.
And you know what? That's okay by me, because they need the product. They're doing a great thing to generate electricity and to help clean up the forest. And so whether it's within that 1 year or coming 2 or 3 years after, is certainly good application and something that we need to do.
And I think we're fortunate to be in the situation where Navajo County has those industries so we can support local economy. That's very fundamental to, I think, what you tried to build in the stewardship agreement. Is there something that in the agreement that you'd like to highlight?
Probably the biggest highlight is I've been able to work in a lot of places across the country. This is one of the only place that I've known of that we do have the luxury of having a biomass generating plant and a pellet mill in the location that can take not only burned timber, but they clean up in the green timber where we're doing task orders, they clean up the slash. We don't have a very large pile burning program on the National Forest. It generates a lot of smoke. Most of that material is gathered up, chipped, and taken to the biomass plant. And that is kind of the understanding. We knew we were running out of time on the merchantability of the burned timber. So it just, I don't know which came first, but it was a very good fit to have this material that's not really worth anything except to burn or to make pellets. And then the need at the time, one piece that we didn't really mention is the Stewardship Authority itself was expiring at the end of 2014.
Had to be renewed and happened in the Farm Bill.
It was renewed under the Farm Bill, so that was just one more piece. It was, if there was any such thing as thin ice, we were on a lot of thin ice at the time. Everything came together, and with the Stewardship Agreement itself, removing that biomass off from the National Forest to allow those forest stands to then start the recovery process on their own or sometimes with help when we do the planning to start for the future, the forest of tomorrow is really what we're looking at.
Well, very good. We've only got a couple of minutes left, about 3 minutes, I think. So, Pascal, any other thing about this contract that you want to talk about that people need to know?
Yes, very briefly. I think twice already we said that we were lucky to have this industry. And I would like to emphasize that luck has actually very little to do with the fact that we have this industry. The reason why we have this industry, Future Forest, Navajo Power, as well as about half a dozen other forest industry, is because over the last 10 years, the stewardship contract of the White Mountain has been the vehicle which has allowed for the recreation of that industry. And I think that people need to know and appreciate the fact that local government, state government, federal government, but very specifically Navajo County, has been absolutely instrumental, both in Phoenix and especially in DC, to create the condition for the investors to come back and recreate that wood industry. So yes, we are lucky to have that wood industry, but I think it goes full circle to see that smart public policy and far-sighting from local elected officials, quite honestly, like you, Supervisor David,
Thank you.
Have created the condition for us to now benefit from the reward of our effort. And that is a process that goes forward, and it is a very, very, very pleasing prospect.
Well, thank you. One thing that I hope we all did is learn from the past. The timber wars of the 80s and 90s did nothing but run our industry out of here and give us grossly overgrown forests.
Yep.
And now we can all work together, as we have been on 4Fry and White Mountain Stewardship Monitoring Board and others, where we bring environmental communities, the government, the industry all together and say, we're going to work on this together. We're tired of it burning up. We recognize industry's got to be the answer. And so we've got to, for industry to treat the forest, we've got to give them acreage to treat. They treat more, we give them more. It's just a cycle that we've got to do. So it's something that's got to happen. And I'm excited. And just, we've got less than 2 minutes. So just wrapping up this, how this will go then. The RFP lets out on Friday. Of course, this is a pre-recorded program. But in early November, we should be awarding that contract. And then the hope is that these contractors get to work and start treating this acreage between now and when the snow flies, so they get it up and going. So it's exciting.
Weather permitting, we're shooting to have this 800 acres processed by the end of December. But that is in the hand of God.
You bet. Well, hey, we've taken about a 2-hour show and put it into 25 or 30 minutes. So kind of goes right along with the theme of compressed time frames and getting it all
That's right.
Done in a hurry. So we are out of time. But I want to thank you both. Jim, you and your office at the Apache Sitgreaves have been excellent for us to work with. I know not every county supervisor in the state has a kind of forest supervisor to work with like I do. So thank you for that.
Okay.
And Pascal, thank you for what you do for Navajo County and for the Eastern Counties organization. You're an asset to our organization. We're glad to have you there.
My pleasure.
So thank you. Dawnafe, anything you want to say in closing?
Well, I want to thank you again for your stewardship. We're fortunate to have such a great partnership with Navajo County and those who represent our forest and protecting us in years to come. I'd also like to give a shout out to a local government class that is paying attention to us, Supervisor Tenney.
Very good.
So thank you.
All right. Dawnafe, thank you. It's been a fun show with you today. So thank you again for coming. Our thanks to Mel West and his crew here at City 4 Television and for the people in Show Low for allowing us to use their facilities. We appreciate that. And thank you both for coming and joining us again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. That'll do it for us here at Navajo County Connection. Thank you again for watching, and we'll see you next time.
We'll see you.